Good evening, everyone. I am Chris, and I'm here to give my review on Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, which is touted to be the final Mission Impossible film in the entire franchise. They do leave it open-ended. I'm not going to go into spoilers just yet, but I don't know. I've got a sneaky suspicion that this isn't going to be the last time that we see Ethan Hunt, potentially in some way, shape, or form. Usually, if a film makes a lot of money, they tend to make a lot more of them, and it'll be very interesting to see how well this film does, because the budget for this film is one of the highest for any film of all time. It's one of the most expensive films ever made. The budget is touted to be between 300 and 400 mil, which is incredible. And that's not even counting the marketing. So you've got to add the marketing on top of that. And usually if you go like double the budget, this film needs to make about 800 million in order to just break even, which is absolutely ridiculous. And it's not just this film that's doing this. A lot of films recently have incredibly huge budgets and then always make a loss, always have a loss because they can never make how much they need to. And it's kind of a diminishing returns a little bit of the franchise. So plans for this film really, really changed. Originally, I think in like 2019, this was originally meant to be a two-parter. It was going to be a two-part finale. You had Dead Reckoning Part 1, and then this was going to be Dead Reckoning Part 2, this big, over-the-top, elaborate finale to the franchise split across two films. And I think it was, there's probably many reasons for it, but I think the main reason, even though they won't admit to this, is the fact that Dead Reckoning Part 1 really didn't do as well as many people were expecting, or certainly as much as the studio was expecting. The budget was just shy of 300 mil, and it only made 570 mil at the box office. Now, that could be for many reasons. It could be of other films that were out around about that point. Was it 2023? Was that when Oppenheimer came out? I can't remember. I think there was something else out around that time anyway. Or it could just be the fact that, in my opinion anyway, and I do have a review for this film on my channel, I really didn't like Dead Reckoning Part 1. I thought it was easily the weakest of the franchise, and I feel like the writing for it was, and just the film experience overall, was definitely lackluster compared to a lot of the other entries in the previous, a lot of the previous entries in the Mission Impossible films. Before Dead Reckoning, I'm a big Mission Impossible fan. I love the first 6 movies. I think my favorite would probably actually have to be Rogue Nation. A lot of people say Mission Impossible Fallout, which is the 6th one. I love that film as well, but I think overall my favorite is definitely Rogue Nation, the 5th one. And I love Fallout. Ghost Protocol was great as well. And I even have a soft spot in my heart for Mission Impossible 2 as well. The crazy John Woo one with so much slow-mo and doves flying past and whatnot. And the Limp Bizkit and the Metallica song in the credits. It's very, very cheesy and a very, very much a product of its time, but I also kind of get a kick out of that one too. But Dead Reckoning took a lot of missteps. It killed some of the main characters off in the core team in a very lackluster way and a very anticlimactic way, and it just really annoyed me. They just didn't do much with the characters. And just the overall premise as well, I just thought was getting to the point of ridiculousness. Not to say that Tom Cruise's character, Ethan Hunt, in the films hasn't done some crazy stuff, but the stunts were getting more over the top, and the stakes were ramped up to ridiculous levels. And I felt like it just ceased to be... It ceased to have the charm, the supporting cast, this crew, this team going out and getting a mission done. It's really not a complex premise for Mission Impossible. It really doesn't have to be. It can be very, very simple. Until we got to Dead Reckoning, a film that I thought was ridiculously self-indulgent and overly long. And as I say, some of the writing in it I thought was terrible, with a lackluster villain as well. So, and I was so hyped for Dead Reckoning Part 1 anyway. Anyway, because it didn't make that much money, they decided to ditch the subtitle of Dead Reckoning Part 2 for this latest one, and instead we get The Final Reckoning, because they were trying to almost disguise it as a completely separate film and not a two-parter. Around about, I think it was 2023 as well, filming on this film was halted because you had the SAG-AFTRA strikes as well. So that delayed filming. It feels like there was a whole lot going on with this film. The composer dropped out as well. It was meant to be Lorne Balfe, who had to drop out, and I think two of his proteges or two of the people working on him ended up doing the score for this final movie. So I guess I was in a place where I wasn't really hyped going into this one, which is a shame, because I think I actually went on record at the time saying that when Dead Reckoning Part 1 was coming out and I saw the trailers for it, it was my most anticipated film of the year, because I love the Mission Impossible films, and I thought certainly around the time that Rogue Nation and Fallout came out, because they were sort of running parallel to the James Bond films at the time. I think it was probably like, what was it? Maybe like Spectre and No Time to Die, perhaps. I thought there was a time where the Mission Impossible films actually got the formula right and almost felt more like a James Bond film than the James Bond films did at that time. James Bond films went very dark and somber and self-important, and the Mission Impossible films had great, globe-trotting settings and wonderful stunts and set pieces and whatnot, memorable stunts, and were just fun. Were fun spy espionage thriller films. Whereas the James Bond films used to be that, and then started to become a little bit mundane, a little bit morose. And unfortunately, getting into my review for this one, and I do want to try and keep this as short as possible if I can, I actually think that Final Reckoning was even worse than Dead Reckoning Part 1. Which is a real shame. The trailers for this thing, they were definitely playing up the nostalgia for this thing, saying that, oh, it's the last Mission Impossible film. And by God, do they do that in the final film. There's so many moments where the editing for this film's all over the place. And the beginning of the film, the opening scene, turns into sort of like an extended clip show of the best of reel of the previous Mission Impossible films. And this happens many times throughout the film. There's characters that return from some of the earlier installments, and I will say that as well. I didn't get a chance to watch Dead Reckoning Part 1 again before going into this one, but I did watch a recap on it. But you kind of need a recap on all of the previous entries, or certainly I'd say Mission Impossible 1, Mission Impossible 3, and probably the fourth one as well. They tend to be the main ones that get referenced again. There was a MacGuffin in Mission Impossible 3, directed by everyone's favorite J.J. Abrams, the creator of the Mystery Box. And there is a MacGuffin in that film, which is the rabbit's foot. And notoriously in the films, the rabbit's foot never really got explained what it was. It was just nothing more than a MacGuffin. It was a setup with no payoff, which is J.J. Abrams all over, isn't it? This movie does try and tie that up, and they do try and retcon it and give an explanation for what the rabbit's foot actually was. And it's like, Ethan, you thought all along the rabbit's foot was this. Well, it turns out it was this thing that is tied in with the entity, which is essentially the bad guy of this film. The entity is this AI, this completely ridiculous sci-fi level AI threat that can predict everyone's moves. It's a million steps ahead of the game and is essentially sentient at this point. It's almost like a physical villain. There's a moment where Ethan has to put on this mask and get into this sensory deprivation coffin thing and essentially get shown a clip show of the future. The AI has predicted the future in visual form and shows him glimpses into his future, like this soothsayer villain, if you will. And I don't know, as I say, I know these films have got completely ridiculous, and I know that we are in the age of AI now, but this was just totally ridiculous to me and felt very much like I was watching a sci-fi film now, completely over the top. And to me, it felt like as these films have gone on, certainly Dead Reckoning and this final one, it feels like we're in Fast and Furious territory a little bit. The simplicity of some of the stunts in the previous films, where it is literally just Ethan hanging on to the wing of a plane. I mean, they kind of do that again in this one, where he's hanging onto a biplane and flipping all over and everything. Stuff like that I do get a kick out of, because you can tell that it's real. You can tell that he's actually doing that. And there's a tangibility to stunts like that in films, and I always do have a respect for Tom Cruise. I will say Tom Cruise does bring his A game, even in this. How old is he now, Tom Cruise? I did want to check that. Tom Cruise is 62 years old, my word. That's Hollywood for you, because he is on fine form in this. Still doing all of the stunts, still looks great while he's doing it. So I've got nothing against Tom Cruise in this or any of the stunts so much, but there are massive, elaborate set pieces in this one which just are very effects heavy and just really stretch the realm of possibility that Ethan would make it out of this alive. And I know you're going to have an element to that. I'm aware of what these kind of films like, but these two films, the previous one and certainly this one, felt like they just pushed it too much in that direction. There's a moment, for example, there's some really convenient writing in this. The editing in the first half of this film was all over the place to me. And it sets up a threat. So essentially in the time between the previous movie and this one, this AI has been raging on. It's slowly taken control of the nation's nuclear arms. And there's been an uprising of religious zealots that want the AI to take over and want it to destroy the world because they want the AI to, you know, bring about a new age, essentially, get rid of all humanity, wipe them all out, and it's the entity's time to rise, essentially. So you've got all of these like pockets of uprisings, but nothing really comes of that. They set all this stuff up at the beginning, that there's protests in the streets. We begin in London, Trafalgar Square, and there's people leading marches championing the entity, but nothing ever comes of that. Ethan never has to fight these pockets of people, and once everything's all dealt with at the end of the film, nothing's ever mentioned of these people. So it's just pointless set decoration at that point. And yeah, the editing's all choppy at the beginning, just character just moving between set pieces with the same characters, and it was very, very difficult to adjust at first as to what actually was the situation, where we were, where our characters have continued on since the previous film. And there's just lots of convenient writing. There's going to be a bit of spoilers now, I guess. I'm going to sprinkle some of the spoilers in. But we open with this moment where Ethan's trying to capture Gabriel, who was the very ineffective and very non-threatening villain from the previous film, who returns in this one. And he's chasing after Gabriel, and he goes to this big, lavish, high society party because he believes Gabriel's there. However, he then gets captured by Gabriel at said party, and he and Hayley Atwell are about to be tortured. Through various back and forths in the dialogue, Gabriel says that, Ethan, you're going to help me. You're going to track down this device that I need from this sunken submarine from the previous movie, and you're going to bring it to me. So I'm going to let you go, Mr. Bond. I'm going to let you go because you are going to retrieve this item. And by the end, because I've seen the future, I know what the entity, I know everyone's move because this AI can predict everything. You are going to bring me this device and I will win. And Ethan manages to get away. There's this bizarre scene where he beats up some of the henchmen in the room, and it just hangs on Hayley Atwell's reaction. And she's like really shocked and like shaken up when Tom Cruise kills the people that were trying to torture him. And I was thinking, I think she has seen him kill people in the previous movie. There's a lot of death in these films. There's a lot of gunfire, and there's a lot of Tom Cruise killing the shit out of people. And I think even Hayley Atwell killed some people in the previous movie. So I don't know why all of a sudden it was like it was her first day on the job and she had that kind of reaction. Anyway, we get to our title sequence, and then we continue and we follow the chase where Tom Cruise is pursuing Gabriel. And then the editing and the situation of where we were in the film was very, very... It was just all over the place to me, because Ving Rhames is now ill, and I think they did set that up in the previous movie, if I remember rightly. He's in a hospital bed. He's clearly not got all that long left to live. And he's creating something which is called the poison pill, which is something that will render the AI inert and will be able to capture the entity, essentially. And he's in this hospital bed, and he, Tom Cruise, and Simon Pegg, they've got this makeshift sort of warehouse, this hideout in the underground of London. And then all of a sudden we're there, and then Gabriel's there, and he set up one of his many nuclear devices in this film. Now, this nuclear device is this like Knights of the Round Table size nuclear device thing, and I'm like, okay, how did Gabriel get it down there? How did he set it up? How did he wire all this place up? and I think it's in the same place. I think it's in the hideout where Tom Cruise's base is. So it's like, how did Ethan and none of the team see Gabriel set this up? I don't know. Maybe it was the editing. Maybe it was actually a different location. But as far as I'm aware, it was the good guy's base. And I just didn't understand. We just cut to this scene, and it's this nuclear device that Gabriel set up. And he traps Ving Rhames and Ethan behind this metal gate. And it's this inescapable thing. Ving Rhames says that I need to switch off this detonator. I need to render this nuclear bomb inert. If this nuclear bomb goes off, it's going to destroy all of London. If I remove the core from in here, it will just create an explosion within these tunnels, but it will give you time, Ethan, to get away. And they have this emotional goodbye scene, and Ving Rhames is dead. Within like the first half hour of this film, he's gone. And I do want to just mention that, like, the tone of this film is so bleak, so dire, so literally end of the world. It's Judgment Day. All the nuclear bombs are going to fly up. The whole world is going to be destroyed. And it's in this effort to constantly up the ante that we've got to get to the point now of literally nuclear Armageddon and Judgment Day. And it's so morose. The other Mission Impossible films have a sense of humor to them. There's that camaraderie in the group. There's some good comedy, but there's obviously some great action and nail-biting moments that go along with it. This one just felt so overstuffed and overblown. And I mean, the runtime alone for this film, if you just look at the runtime for all of the Mission Impossible films, the steady incline and the increase of the runtime. The previous movie, Dead Reckoning, I think was like 160 minutes, wasn't it? It was, 163 minutes. So we're pushing 3 hours with that previous one. And this one is a whopping 170 minutes, just shy of 3 hours. I'm sorry, but you don't need 3 hours to tell a Mission Impossible story. Just give me a good, solid two and a bit hour film with a good adventure, good espionage, spy thriller with great action and some fun interplay between the gang. That's all you need. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, especially when you're 8 films deep in this thing. But this felt like the recent James Bond films, as I mentioned, that the first 6 Mission Impossible films felt like they had that fun and charm and light-hearted action quality of some of the earlier Bond films. And then as the Bond films went on, they got really self-important and serious and dour and miserable. And this is like what Dead Reckoning, and certainly this one is. The audience, I will say it was a packed audience when I went to see it last night, but the audience was just dead. Apart from one audience member. The woman sat a couple of seats to the left of me was laughing at everything, even when the joke wasn't funny. You always have that person who goes like, huh. And she was the only one doing it. I don't know if she had some kind of like nervous tick or nervous laugh, but even just like the most unfunny line, she'd laugh at. So she was loving it. Fair play to her. She was getting a kick out of it. And the only time the audience actually woke up and perked up was some of the Simon Pegg lines towards the end, where there's a moment where he gets shot and he's sort of like fading in and out of consciousness. And that had some funny comedy to it. And the audience reacted. But before that, the audience was just stone silent and just really, well, I don't know, maybe they were really engrossed in it. Maybe I got the wrong end of the stick, but I got the impression that people were just sort of going through the motions of it. This film is way too long at 170 minutes. The ending certainly goes on ridiculously long. There's the ticking clock again at the end, like a lot of these Mission Impossible films, and there's like a 16-minute timer. And I'm not joking. It felt like this ending went on for way over half hour, and it keeps cutting back. Like, we've only got 14 minutes left. I'm like, are you kidding me? About 10 minutes have gone by. You're telling me that 2 minutes have gone on the clock? But yeah, it just really, really drags its feet at the end. And these action scenes don't need to go on for about half hour. You can have just like a really tight, like 10-minute action scene tops. And to me, that can sometimes, unless you've got the story behind it, and you can keep ramping up that action and you can keep it going for a long time. But I felt once you're over the initial hype of this elaborate set piece at the end, it kind of lost a lot of its thrills. Other convenient moments in this film. There's a ridiculous moment where, okay, so Tom Cruise is going on the hunt for the sunken Russian submarine from the end of the first from the beginning of the previous film, the beginning of Dead Reckoning. He's going in the Arctic and he's trying to find the coordinates for whereabouts it is. Now, his plan is to find the coordinates. He needs Benji and the team to find the coordinates, transmit those coordinates to him so he can dive down all the way down to like Titanic depths of the Arctic Ocean, get inside this submarine, get inside the where the core is, where the entity was created, extract the device that he needs, and then get back out of there. And he's waiting for his team to relay the coordinates. I think he knows the general area of where the submarine is, but he needs precise coordinates. And essentially what he wants to do is, once he's dived down and retrieved the coordinates, his team will be waiting for him in the exact spot where he would surface, so that when he rises up, he'll get decompression sickness, he'll get the bends, he probably will drown, and his team will be waiting on the ice to cut the ice open and extract him from that exact infinitesimal spot on that ice and get him to like a decompression chamber. He manages to get a hold of an aircraft carrier from the permission of the US, from the president and the US Army. And he's flying around and essentially he's waiting for the coordinates from his team. And the team have ran into a bit of a snafu at that moment, so there's a delay in getting him the coordinates. And his pilot is saying, look, we haven't got much fuel left. The Russians are getting suspicious. The Russians are on our ass. We can't stay here. And he's like, look, just give me 5 more minutes. They'll get me the coordinates. And they said, we can give you 1. So Tom Cruise just runs out of the plane, free falls straight into the Arctic temperatures of buttfuck nowhere Arctic Ocean. And is just in the water, is just sort of like paddling around. He has no plan. He just jumped out of the plane and landed in the water, freezing. We're talking Arctic. He's literally in the Arctic, in the freezing depths, and he's just wearing like a normal shirt. He's not even wearing like any kind of thermal insulating stuff or a breathing mask. He just jumped straight in the water. So right there, I'm like, well, he's fucking dead. But conveniently, and I could be wrong, I don't think there's any explanation for this. Some scuba divers just happen to converge right on that said spot and rescue him. Then we just cut. And he's been taken down into a US submarine where he's now safe. They're sort of warming him up in the shower. They've got hot water on him. And he's fine. I was like, oh, well, that was convenient. That one space, because that wasn't part of the plan. He was waiting for coordinates, which he didn't get. So we just jumped into a random spot in the ocean, which just so happened to have some convenient scuba divers there to then take it, which happened to be on his side, an American, and to take him down to a submarine. We don't see them take him down. It just cuts to the next scene and he's on the submarine. So I was like, well, that's bullshit. Anyway, he convinces them to find where the submarine is. He manages to find the coordinates. And the plan is, as I mentioned, he's going to dive down. He's going to retrieve what he needs to. He then needs to surface really, really quickly. He will get decompression sickness. His muscles will give out. He will die, and then he'll be retrieved on the surface. So we have this really long, slow, drawn-out sequence where he dives right down. And I will say the sets in this scene are incredible. Like, once he gets inside the submarine, the way they've got it laid out, and it's all flooded with water, and the submarine starts to tip, like the wreck of the ship starts to shift and to collapse a little bit. And it's almost like Inception. The set actually twists and the water level changes. All of that stuff was great. And I loved how it was, because they clearly built so many of these sets in the interior, all the room to rooms in the submarine. I'd love to see the behind the scenes on this particular sequence, because it was very, very well crafted, and the stage and everything. But it does go on for a very, very long time. And because, he's slow, he's moving underwater, very meticulous movements, minimal music in this scene as well. It does overstay its welcome a little bit. And you are there just wanting to check your watch, like, okay, let's get this moving. Because we have had an underwater sequence before in Mission Impossible. In Rogue Nation, there's a moment where he needs to hold his breath for a stupidly long amount of time, and he has to open like a hatch or something. It's like in like a dam, isn't it, or something, some kind of like water turbine, if I remember rightly, in the 5th one. And that was really intense because you could almost play along at home, like, can I hold my breath for that long? And there was the ticking clock, and it was all really intense. So I love that sequence in Rogue Nation. But in this one, you just watched him go from room to room, and it's really slow, and the submarine shifts a little bit, and then he moves from room to room, and then it shifts a little bit more, and it just went on for a very, very long time. There's a moment as he's making his descent as well where the Russian submarine is coming right up to him, and he smacks into it, and he's like bouncing along it, bouncing off the hull, is it, off the side of the submarine all along. He's like, do you remember the Titanic film where that guy jumps off and hits the propeller and he just like spins? He's like that. And I was like, okay, well, he's broken every single bone in his body then at this point with this speeding submarine, and he careens straight into it and bounces all along it. But no, he's fine. He's fine. And then he's clinging on to the back of the submarine, and the propeller's right there, and he has to sort of shimmy over to the side to avoid the propeller. All of this goes on. So it just got really over convoluted with stuff, and it really stretched the realm of possibility of what he could survive. And I know it's Tom Cruise, and I know it's Ethan Hunt, but you got like a giant CGI submarine and he's bouncing along it. I'm like, you're stretching the realm of believability here. Anyway, he gets into the submarine, he retrieves what he needs to retrieve, and then he's trying to make his way out. And because Ethan Hunt broke a mirror in a previous life, all bad shit starts to happen. So this submarine keeps shifting, and all the missiles that were stocked in the submarine start to clang and bang around, and they end up blocking his entrance. So he has to improvise. Right, how am I going to get out of this submarine? And he decides to try and get into the missile hatch, where they fire the torpedoes out. So he's going to get himself in there and essentially launch himself back out. And he's trying to get in there, and he's got all of his scuba gear on. He's got his mask on, and he's got like this jetpack thing that helps propel him down towards the floor of the ocean. And he's trying to get into the missile chamber, and this big backpack that he's got on, he won't fit, so he needs to ditch it. So what does he do? He takes off the backpack, but he also takes all of his scuba gear off. He is bare-chested. He is in his briefs in like Titanic depths of the Arctic Ocean. I can't stress that enough. He would instantly freeze to death, but he's fine. He's all good. He's Tom Cruise, you know. He gets inside the missile chamber, and he manages to get out. And from the depths of the fucking ocean, even deeper than he planned, because this submarine, as I mentioned, slides off like it slides off like the bedrock shelf and into a chasm and free falls. So he's even deeper than he intended to be. He's at crushing depth at this point. And he's just bare-chested. I don't even think he's got a mask on at this point, if I remember rightly. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's maskless. And he's swimming towards the surface. And then this bag that he's carrying gets snagged on the submarine that's careening towards the icy depths. And it pulls him down again. And it's dragging him deeper and deeper. And it's hurtling, and it's picking up velocity. And he's getting towards crushing depths even more. And he's fighting his way to the surface, and then he eventually gives out and he dies. But then Hayley Atwell's there to give him the kiss of life. And when you can't explain something, what do? You fade to white, or you fade to black, and you fade back in, or you crossfade. We don't need to explain it. And she's managed to find him at that exact same part of the ice, that exact coordinate, with the decompression chamber there ready to go to rescue him. And he's fine. He's all good. He's back up and running. Crushing depths of the Arctic Ocean, bare-chested, and he's fine. I was out. I was checked out. I was like, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely fucking ridiculous. And here's the thing. His plan was that he was going to swim to the surface so that his team is waiting for him and they were going to get the coordinates there. But he was way off course. Like, they had to plan it down to the square centimeter of where he would be. And he was in the wreck. But then the submarine wreck careened off to the side and started going... Like, he was probably miles off course of where he needed to be. But somehow he managed to get to the exact part of the ice, even though it yeah, I don't know. It's probably one of those films like, oh, just switch your brain off, just go with it. I'm like, no, because you didn't have to do that as much with the other films. This is ridiculous. This is, as I said, Fast and Furious territory. It's totally ridiculous. And because you put in Ethan in all of these elaborate scenarios where there's no way he would escape or no way that he'd survive, it feels like I'm just watching someone with God mode. And the action scenes cease to have any kind of tension to them or peril. Even though he's Tom Cruise and he's Ethan Hunt in the other films, and he's going to get out of the situation, there's still tension there because it's called Mission Impossible for a reason. You're like, well, I have no idea how he's going to get out of this. And when it's grounded just enough, you really feel that tension. When I'm watching this, I'm like, no human could physically survive this crushing depths of Arctic freezing water beds. Anyway. And then we go on from there, and we really just sort of gear up for the ending at this point, where Gabriel's waiting for him in Africa, and he's constructed another nuclear device. As I say, he cranks out these nuclear devices, and this is going to blow up the place, essentially. He wants Ethan to bring him the entity. At this point, Ethan and his team come up with a plan of how to trap the entity. They're going to let it try to take control of this military bunker, I think it is. And they're going to try and trap it almost like a genie in a bottle. They've got this USB device, and they're going to plug it into this device. They're going to wait till the entity tries to infect this mainframe. And as soon as it gets in, they have to snatch this thing out to trap it in this USB device. They have to do it in a blink of an eye. As soon as it lights up, they've got to extract it. Because in 100, I think it's like 100th of a second or 100 milliseconds or something like that, the entity will launch all of the nuclear missiles. If they extract it too soon, the entity doesn't get into the device and it still launches all of the missiles across the world. So they have to wait just at the right time until it gets in and then snatch it out. That's the plan. So Ethan gets there and Gabriel's there, and then the rest of the IMF show up, and they're trying to pursue Ethan again at the moment. I don't know how many more missions that Ethan Hunt needs to go on before he wins the trust of the IMF, because I swear to God, every film, they're like, Ethan, we're going to chase you, we're going to hunt you, you've gone rogue, you've gone off script. And he's like, trust me, I'm trying to save the world here. And they're like, no, you need to bring yourself in, you need to surrender yourself to us, and you need to retire. And then he'll save the day for the last 7 movies. And in this one, they're like, we don't trust you, Ethan Hunt. You're corrupt, and we need to bring you in. You need to call this whole thing off. The entity can't be controlled. It's futile. And it leads to, everything kicks off. There's a big firefight between Gabriel, the IMF, and Ethan. And Gabriel tries to escape. He puts a 16-minute countdown on this nuclear device, and he's like, this will blow up and level everything, and all of the nuclear missiles will fly and whatnot. So Gabriel gets into a car. Ethan gets into a car and starts chasing him. I'm like, right, mental note, 16 minutes on the clock. And I'm sort of counting that down as I'm watching the film. So he's chasing him in the car, and then Ethan's car crashes, and he gets out. And then he starts doing the run, the Tom Cruise run, the Ethan Hunt run that he does in every single film. And he starts chasing after this Jeep on foot. And, like, Gabriel's gone in the car. He's in a moving car, for fuck's sake. Like, he's gone. And I thought, okay, so there's no way that Ethan's catching up to him then, because he's lost his car. He's lost any mode of transport to try and catch up with Gabriel. Then Gabriel gets into a biplane, and he's got some kind of lackey as well who's in another biplane. So Gabriel's in the yellow biplane, and then his henchman is in the red one behind him. And I'm like, okay, so there's no way Ethan can catch up with him then. Ethan tries to clamber onto Gabriel's plane, and he just narrowly misses it, but he manages to catch on to the red plane. And again, there's no transition here. He was just on foot chasing after him, and then all of a sudden they happen to be at the airstrip where he needs to be to get onto this plane so we can have our elaborate dogfight sequence in the skies. Now, the way that this was filmed with the planes was very impressive. The way that the camera's getting in close and following these two planes at really low altitude. On the biggest screen, you do get the spectacle of cinema with this. It is an incredible sequence. it is a sequence that I felt went way too long. And once you're over the initial rush of Tom Cruise dangling onto the side of the plane as it loop-de-loops and corkscrews and whatnot, you're kind of over it. And this felt like it went on for 20 minutes of watching him dangling on this plane. I was like, we're dragging this out. And of course, we're cutting to other stuff as well. So Tom Cruise manages to commandeer the red biplane from the henchman. And this is what I mean, like padding stuff out. He jumps in the front compartment to try and control the plane. And then he realizes that, oh, it has to be controlled in the compartment behind. So he then has to climb back out of the plane to get in the back seat. I'm like, we didn't need that. You could have cut that bit out. It's just filler. It's just dragging this shit out than it needs to be. There's a bit of a dogfight, a bit of near misses with Gabriel's plane. It ultimately ends where Tom Cruise gets onto Gabriel's plane, and Gabriel's trying to, loop-de-loop and trying to throw Ethan Hunt off the plane. And then this is another bit where the writing doesn't make any sense. So Gabriel says, I think the engine cuts out, it stalls, and the plane's about to go into a free fall. Gabriel starts laughing. And he says, I've got the only parachute. There's only one parachute, Ethan. What are you going to do? And then he jumps off the plane. But as he jumps out off the plane, his head smacks into the rudder at the back. And it's played for laughs. It's really, really... It's quite slapsticky, actually, how Gabriel goes out in this film. I didn't think Gabriel was an engaging villain anyway in the previous film or this one. He's not intimidating at all. He's a very, very weak villain. But yeah, he just goes, goodbye, Ethan, jumps off, and then accidentally smacks his head on the back of the plane. And it's all played for laughs. And I was thinking, oh, shit, okay, so Gabriel, he just said, there's only one parachute, Ethan, what are you going to do? And he just jumped off. He got the last parachute. So then Ethan's trying to steady the plane, and it's going to crash. So Ethan jumps out of the plane. And you're thinking, oh my God, it's the last Mission Impossible film. Ethan's going to die. And he's free falling and he's trying to connect this device into the thing to trigger the thing to trap the entity. And he's free falling. And then all of a sudden he just unleashes a parachute. And I was like, Gabriel just said there was one parachute. So where has he got this parachute from? And I don't know if this parachute was coated in some kind of flammable device, because it randomly just catches fire and the whole canopy of the parachute just sets on fire and disintegrates. Ethan's back in free fall and he's trying to connect this device as he's falling down. And then we cut back to the team. They trap the entity and you're thinking like, oh God, Ethan's died. He managed to connect this as he was falling and then he smacked the ground. We can't have that, can we? We've got to keep it open-ended for the next movie. And he has like a white parachute. I'm like, okay, so he had not one, but two parachutes, plus Gabriel. So that makes 3 parachutes. So what was Gabriel saying that there's only one parachute for? And I was so confused by this that I went to Wikipedia to read the plot synopsis of this film to just check if I'd missed anything. And no, I haven't. It says... I'm just reading off Wikipedia here. Ethan chases Gabriel in a biplane and climbs onto Gabriel's plane midair. Gabriel fails to shake him off and jumps off with a parachute, but is killed after hitting the plane's rudder. Ethan finds a second parachute. But if that's the case, then why put that line in the movie from Gabriel? Why have him say, there's only one parachute, Ethan, what are you going to do? Ha 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 ha, as he jumps off the plane. Just cut that line. Anyway, he saves the day. They trap the entity. The nuclear bombs don't launch. Humanity is safe. Nothing ever comes of that whole religious zealot thing that we set up at the first part of the movie. And the IMF are cool with Ethan now. And then the film just sort of ends where all of them meet up in London and none of them say a word to each other. It's very similar to the end of Inception, when they all land the plane and they're in the airport and you've got Leonardo DiCaprio just sort of walking through the crowd and he acknowledges Joseph Gordon-Levitt and he nods his head at Ellen Page and Tom Hardy and everything. It's very similar to that. They all just sort of awkwardly meet in the center. Tom Cruise is like in the center of the group and he looks at Benji and he nods at him. And then what's her name? Pom Klimtiv whatever her name is, the one who plays Mantis, she nods at him, and yeah, and that's the end of the movie. And then Haley Atwell shows up and hands Ethan the entity, which is trapped in this sort of USB device, and then he just walks off, and that's it. Like the entity isn't destroyed. Ethan is in possession of this ultra powerful AI that is now contained and trapped in this USB device. And if this USB device is ever connected to anything, then chances are all of this shit would probably happen again, and it would just infect all of the computers and everything. They keep saying if they trap the entity, then all of cyberspace will cease to exist. And I'm like, how? Why? I mean, they do trap the entity at the end, so does that mean internet is gone? Is the world back in the dark ages? It doesn't look like it is at the end. So that plot thread kind of went nowhere, and just seemed like it was artificially put in there to try and raise the stakes without really thinking about the ramifications of it. And yeah, and that's it. So like Ethan lives, he is now in possession of the entity, and he just walks away from camera, and we cut to credits. We don't destroy the entity, we don't get rid of it for good, which is a bit of a head-scratching moment, because earlier, after Haley Atwell revives Ethan after he's done his deep-sea dive in the Arctic, she says, oh, maybe if we can control the entity, and it almost like she becomes a villain in that moment. She's like, but it's unlimited power, Ethan. Why would we want to get rid of that? What if we can control it? I'm like, that's what the IMF is wanting to do. That's precisely why Ethan is going against the IMF at this moment, because he doesn't, humans can't control this. He needs to destroy it. He needs to get rid of it for good. But Haley Atwell's like, oh, what if it was in the hands of someone we could trust? Like, I trust you with the entity, Ethan. And he's like, no one deserves this power. It's like this godlike AI power. No human should have that. It needs to be destroyed. But at the end, she hands it him, and he's cool with it, and he just has it. And he doesn't destroy it. So it keeps it open-ended, I guess, for another one, because Ethan Hunt's still out there, and he's got this device. And nothing really feels like it's resolved. There's no sort of like final moment where he speaks to Benji. Benji's been in, how many of these films was he in? He was in Mission Impossible 3, wasn't he? So he's been in a substantial amount of these films, more than a lot of the cast members in this film. And I just thought overall, tying it in with Dead Reckoning, that we kill Rebecca Ferguson off in a really fucking anticlimactic way in that first one. Vanessa Kirby's not in this movie either. I think originally Vanessa Kirby was meant to be in both films. I actually can't remember if her character was killed off in the previous film. I don't think she was, because there's a moment in the previous movie, if I'm remembering rightly, where Haley Atwell needs to impersonate Vanessa Kirby, and she, they wear the masks and everything, and they take the identity. But I don't think she died. I can't remember. I mean, if she died, fair enough. That's the explanation why she's not in this. But I think I saw somewhere that the director confirmed that she was going to be in both films, but she, the White Widow or whatever she's called, she's not in this movie. And I guess I was just expecting more of a send-off. It's just this really crummy moment where they all just stare at each other in Trafalgar Square and then just go their separate ways. So, yeah, this was just a bit of a letdown for me. I thought after Dead Reckoning Part 1, you've got nowhere to go but up, but I think we went down. I think we went even lower. There's a moment during the deep sea dive sequence as well. I was just going to raise a point about the soundtrack here. The soundtrack's fine. It sounds very much like the soundtrack to what we've had in the previous ones, that sort of pseudo Hans Zimmer kind of sound to it. And the Mission Impossible theme does kick in periodically throughout the film. I always get a kick out of that. But when Tom Cruise makes his dive to the submarine, it sounds, if anyone's seen it, and you know what I'm talking about, it sounds exactly like the Darth Plagueis music. In Revenge of the Sith, where Palpatine is telling Anakin the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise in the Opera House, and you've got that very like that creepy, eerie throat singing. Is that what they call it? That, it's almost the exact same track plays when he's making his descent down to the submarine. If anyone's seen it and you know what I'm talking about, it sounded exactly the same as that song. And yeah, and that's Mission Impossible. It's meant to be the last one. It's treated as the last one. There's a lot of callbacks to the original film, and some of the earlier films. As I say, there's moments in the editing where it essentially becomes a clip show of the previous films, showing you a best of reel. But there is talk of the future. I've actually just checked this out. So Tom Cruise hasn't ruled it out. He's expressed interest in continuing to make further films, and I think he likened it to Harrison Ford coming back to play Indiana Jones in his early 80s. Yeah, look how that went in Dial of Destiny. Does anyone want like a super like 80-year-old Ethan Hunt, super fucking old Ethan Hunt breaking his hip on these missions? I don't want that. And then there was rumors as well that the guy who was in Top Gun Maverick, Glenn Powell, I think he was in that new Twisters film that came out. Tom Cruise was saying that he'd quite like him to replace him as the main lead in these films and recast. However, Glenn Powell denied this rumor, so I don't know if that's true or not. I don't want to recast, but with a franchise like this, if it does continue to make money, then I think the studio, because it is a cash cow, they will just probably reboot it in some way. I don't want them to do any more. Unfortunately, this franchise has jumped the shark for me as of these final two movies. To me, in my head canon, it all ended after Mission Impossible Fallout. I think that was a fantastic ending. I think that was arguably one of the franchise's high points, was that film. Really, really fucking good action film. Great Mission Impossible film. And then there's these two stuck on the end with really terrible writing. And I don't know why it's terrible writing. I wondered if there was different writing team on this one, and it really isn't. So the screenwriter of both of these final two movies is the director, Christopher McQuarrie, and he's helped write some of the previous ones. He directed two of my favorite entries in the entire franchise with Rogue Nation and Fallout. And he co-wrote this film with Eric Jenderson now. Jenderson. Eric Jenderson. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. But you look at his credits and he hasn't done like a whole bunch of stuff, but he's wrote 3 episodes of Band of Brothers. Pretty fucking good credentials there. So I don't know what went wrong with this. I don't know if this was just if this monster that was meant to be Dead Reckoning Part 1 and Part 2, this massive, overwhelmingly huge, dragged out story that needs to occupy 2 films, was the best idea. It felt like they were really trying to go above and beyond, and we need to keep constantly up in the ante and bigger. And how do we do that? Well, we need to have the whole world is under threat by this science fiction AI that is going to launch all of the missiles on Earth and destroy humanity. I'm like, I guess you could make that work, but to me, the story just isn't there. It's incredibly convoluted and needlessly dragged out. I mean, both of these parts combined almost clock in at 6 hours. If you're looking at Part 1 and Final Reckoning, ridiculous. They should have just made 2 separate films. The intention was to film both of these back to back, and that never went to plan. We've got Dead Reckoning Part 1, which now I think in subsequent releases they've dropped the subtitle Part 1. So even the titles don't make any sense. We had Dead Reckoning Part 1, and now we just have this nebulous Part 1 that just exists in the ether, because then we have the Final Reckoning. And the only reason they did that was because it didn't make money. So they thought, oh, the title was the problem, and not that Dead Reckoning Part 1 was kind of a shitty movie. So, yeah. Anyway, sorry, I've got some comments there. I'm going to round it off now. I've pretty much said everything I can on Mission Impossible. I didn't even want this to go to 50 minutes necessarily, but there we go. Bath Time says, hope the film's decent and the sorry to disappoint, and the AI villain turns out to be something interesting and not Norton antivirus. We got Tradable Jack says, hey Chris, how you doing, man? Hope you're doing good. And Travis says, how's it going? Can't wait for Tom to come back for Lesion Limp Hospital final bedwetting. Lesion Limp Hospital final bedwetting. That's good. I mean, he is getting up there. He still looks great. Before the film started, there was a bit of like a 2-camera video message from Tom Cruise. And we all know in real life he's a complete psychopath, sociopath, whatever you want to call him. I get the impression in real life he's like a Patrick Bateman kind of character. And I'm not just saying that because of the Scientology shit. Like, he has that smile and like he's dead behind the eyes. He's very good with his fans, but I think it is all a front. And you know, he is great with his fans. I met him at the Mission Impossible 6 premiere. I went to London. I managed to get a picture with him and an autograph, and he was really, really cool. He delays premieres in order to take a picture with everyone. And I think he is very, very smart in Hollywood. He knows how to work it, because you have so many of these actors that get on their soapbox on Twitter or whatever it is, or X, I guess now, at these awards ceremonies. And they're all, you know, preaching this and that and these agendas and pushing this and geopolitical fucking things. And it's like, he knows what his job is. He knows that it is his job to act, to direct, to produce, whatever, and to entertain us. It's us going to see these films that are putting cash in his wallet. And he knows that. And he knows that we know that. And we don't want any more from him than that. He's very, very good at what he does. And I will say with Tom Cruise, as I say, he's great with his fans. He probably gets home and like scrubs himself with iron wool, like, oh, these dirty, disgusting peasants have had their grubby mitts all over me. He probably is like that. Who is the real Tom Cruise? Does Tom Cruise even know who the real Tom Cruise is? I don't know. But at least with his people, his fans, he is very good. And he is an absolute master at his craft and what he does. And you see this, you know, in his producing and how he throws himself into all these stunts. I was watching him clinging onto this biplane in this film. I was like, Tom, you're an absolute mad bastard. But he's great. He's great at it, and he's one of the few actors that will go that extra mile to do that. So he does talk to the audience, and he says, I hope you really enjoy this film. You know, he says it was really hard work making it, but we made it for you. So enjoy. And I like that. I wish I could, Tom. I wish I did enjoy this movie. I appreciate all the effort you went into it, but I didn't like Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. I think it was the worst one, and I really genuinely do hope that the franchise ends here. I think it's completely jumped the shark by this point. Where do you go from here? Where do you go after nuclear holocaust? Where do we go from possible Judgment Day? You can't... Space? There is rumors, actually, that the next film that he does, he's going to be the first actor to film something in space or in that part of the stratosphere where it's as good as space. It's like as high up as you can go. He's a total mad lad, and I love him for it. Maybe that's the next Mission Impossible film. Maybe we go to space. Who the fuck knows? Absolute insanity. But yeah, I just want the franchise. We're 8 films deep now, 6 of which have been pretty damn good. Some a lot better than others. But yeah, here we are. Robin says, to be fair, if something was going to end the world, my money would be on AI. Yeah, you're not wrong. We are getting there. It is developing very, very quickly. So yeah, I mean, here's me saying this AI is like some sci-fi bullshit and it can predict the future and everything like that. Who knows? In a couple of years, not even like, I was going to say like 10 years, maybe in like a year's time, we'll be there. And I'll look back at this review and thinking, how naive I was. We did get there eventually. Travis said, I would like a Risky Business sequel with him starting a whorehouse at his parents' house after they die. Only he's in his 60s. Dude, Risky Business. I got it right here, man. I fucking love that movie. Great soundtrack as well to it. And Rebecca De Mornay in it as well. Yeah. That'll get your pulse racing. And it's got Phil Collins in it as well, isn't it? Is it In the Air Tonight? I think it's In the Air Tonight in the subway sequence. Is Tangerine Dream? Did Tangerine Dream do the soundtrack to that film? Or am I thinking of a different film? Doesn't say on the back. Pretty sure it is. Robin says, I do love Tom Cruise's acting. Yeah, he's great. And here's the thing, like, he's always Tom Cruise. In every film he's in, I never really see him as a character. I'm like, Tom Cruise in... Even the title of this film, I cropped it for this, but it's Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. That is the logo for the film. His name is part of the logo for the actual film. But he's always great. You know, he always shows up. He always gives it his all. And God damn it, that's just kind of what I want from a movie star and an action star. I think genuinely he is one of the last few movie stars, if we can call them that now, because I just really don't get that from many of them. I get that from Brad Pitt. I get that from Leonardo DiCaprio. I get it from Tom Cruise. But the list is steadily declining now. That persona, that aura almost. And I don't want to like blow smoke up their ass because they're fucking people. They eat and shit like the rest of us, but or maybe they don't. Maybe they're all lizards in skin suits. Who knows? Travis says, in high school, I wrote a sequel to Days of Thunder for English. I wrote a sequel to Days of Thunder for English class called Knights of Downpour. Got a B+. It was bad. I don't know, man. We've seen some pretty shocking sequels recently, so I'd take a chance on Knights of Downpour. I'd give it a go. B+ is pretty good going, as some sequels go. Robin says, I will always love Cruise movies because they never lecture me. Exactly. That's what I was saying. Like, he knows. And here's the thing, like, maybe he does have political ideologies on certain things. I imagine most of us do. But maybe he's just smart enough to keep his fucking mouth shut and knows what puts food on the table and what people respond to. I think he's very smart in that regard. I think he's a shark. I genuinely think he's a shark. I think he's just dead behind the eyes. You see that even in all the pictures, he just assumes the pose. You put your arm around him or whatever, you do your gang signs or whatever. Like, it's Tom Cruise, and he's just there, like, almost like full waxworks initiated, just dead eyes, just nothing, just a void. And that's what I think Tom Cruise is. I do genuinely think he's like a complete sociopath or maybe even a psychopath. I don't know, but he masks it very well. He's got the public persona, and he is a very, very fucking hard worker. And I will respect that in anyone, because I tell you what, there ain't many actors that will do that. And he's 62 years old, and he still fucking brings it, and he can still do it. So yeah, he's great. Robin, what's your favorite Tom Cruise movie? Well, actually, I throw that question out to anyone who's watching. What is your favorite Tom Cruise movie if you had to pick one? Because he's done a lot of films at this point, hasn't he? Jesus Christ. Travis says, we've seen enough death-defying stuff from him, I think, and all the right moves follow up with Cruise actually playing football in his 60s would actually be interesting. Yeah, no, that's cool. I'm trying to think what I'd go for. Let me have a look at some of his movies. I mean, you've got the classics like Rain Man, and you've got Eyes Wide Shut and things like that. Let's see if there's any. I mean, Tropic Thunder is one of his best performances as well. I know that's more. Well, it is a comedy. Top Gun. I love Top Gun Maverick. Actually, I really genuinely love that movie. And there is a new film called F1, which is coming out from the director of Mission Impossible. Sorry, not Mission Impossible. From the director of Top Gun Maverick, which. I'm not even a big F1 guy, but I love that film so much, Top Gun, that I kind of want to take a chance on that. And I think that the really crazy plane stunts and whatever with the cameras and how it was filmed, I could see that translating quite well to those nail-biting races in F1. So, and that's got Brad Pitt in as well, as I was saying, movie stars. So I might check that out when it comes out. But as I say, I'm not a massive F1 guy, so I think a lot of it is probably going to go right over my head. Can we get some love for Legend as well? Do you remember the Ridley Scott movie? That must have been one of Tom Cruise's first films, I would imagine. The one with Tim Curry where he plays Darkness. That's got Tom Cruise in that, isn't it? I think. Let's see. Travis says Collateral. Oh my God. Yeah, no, I forgot that movie. Yeah, Collateral's great. Rain Man. Yeah, Top Gun Maverick and War of the Worlds are the big ones for me. It's been a long time since I've seen War of the Worlds. I went to the cinema a couple of times to see that, I think. And that was 04, wasn't it? If I remember. Oh, 05. Yeah, I remember it being a decent film, like a decent blockbuster film. But I don't know. Something about it never really brought me back to it after that. And I don't know why, because it wasn't a bad film. I thought it was perfectly fine. Even despite the change in setting and the change in time period and whatnot, it's just a modern retelling. So, yeah, Edge of Tomorrow is very good as well. To throw another more modern one in there. It came out in 2014, which is still modern to me, but it's over 10 years ago. I have to be mindful of that. But Edge of Tomorrow was really good, much better than it had any right to be. Travis says War of the Worlds is interesting because he's a lead character who's a crappy dad instead of a perfect one. Yeah, no, he's definitely got flaws in that, which I appreciate. I think the scene that stuck with me the most was the the aircraft carrier scene where you've got all the civilians pouring on and it's starting to capsize, isn't it? If I remember rightly. And for some reason, the scene where his son really wants to go in the military, doesn't he? I think, and he runs up to the top of this hill and he sees the military waging like a strike against the tripods, and his son really wants to go down there and be a part of them, and then he just runs off. And if I remember rightly, we don't see his son again after that. I thought that was quite. I don't know. Something about that moment really stuck with me too. Miranda Otto's in that film, isn't she? Does she play his wife? Eowyn from Lord of the Rings. I genuinely think that, yeah, Lord of the Rings and her bit part in War of the Worlds might be the only two films that I've seen her in. I know she's done Sabrina, I think, that new Sabrina show that came out, but yeah. He's done so many films, hasn't he? My God. Born on the 4th of July is another one. Interview with a Vampire, yeah. Jerry Maguire. Just absolute classics across the Vanilla Sky, Minority Report. I am just The Last Samurai. My God, that's a great film. I am just listing Tom Cruise movies off right now. The dude's got an incredible career. And even though I didn't like Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, that's not a knock against Tom Cruise, and it's certainly not a knock against his career. This is a perfectly fine action movie, but I did just think at 170 minutes, it was egregiously long, and just the tone of it was really miserable. And it felt like we can't have fun in these Mission Impossible films now, and everything just got a bit dire and depressing, and huge leaps in logic with this film, and all of it was just a bit too much for me, even compared to some of the other Mission Impossible films. So, yeah, if you like the other films, then maybe check this one out, finish them out strong, watch it on a big screen. I will say that like the set design in some parts and the actual direction, especially during the final action sequences, are all really well done. The sound design when he goes to the crushing depths and he's in the submarine was great. And I was noticing that stuff like sound design and, the ambience. I went to see it on iSense screen, so it has Dolby Atmos and whatnot. So all of that was a really good visual experience. And it had been a while since I'd been to the cinema. Before that, I'd went to see the 4DX experience of Revenge of the Sith. And before that, I think it was Nosferatu in January was the last time that I went to the cinema, if I remember rightly. But yeah, just good films now are very few and far between. So I am finding myself, unfortunately, and this is also due to free time as well now with my job, I don't get to the cinema all that much. But I do have my cinema tickets booked for the next film that's coming out, which will be, in a week or so, I think. It's the new Karate Kid movie with Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan. I'm a big Karate Kid fan. I love the original trilogy. I've absolutely adored Cobra Kai, even if it did get a little bit shitty towards the end. But I've got my tickets booked for Karate Kid Legends. I'm going to be seeing that on Sunday, the 1st of June. So I'll have a review out for that. That'll probably be the next big film review. But I actually haven't seen that. Was it the 2010 Jackie Chan Karate Kid movie? So because that's tying in with this new one, I will probably jump on a review for that at some point. That's just going to be my first time watching that and my initial opinions on it. And then after I've watched that and that new one, I can safely say that I have seen every single Karate Kid film and the TV show. So what an achievement. Going back to War of the Worlds. His son Robbie does end up reunited with him at the end of the film, but can't forget when he makes his daughter cover her hairs while he murders the crazy guy who went quiet. Yeah, that was a great scene. That was Tim Robbins, was it? Or am I thinking of Scary Movie 4? No, it is Tim Robbins, isn't it, in that scene? I'm so used to Scary Movie 4, which takes the piss out of War of the Worlds, that I think I've confused the two of them. Anyway, I'm going to round off tonight, guys, because I've been talking for an hour on this thing. But thank you for everyone jumping in and keeping the conversation going. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, to chat with me, to talk all things Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible related. This was great. So if you have seen Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, do let me know. I have a feeling that I'm going to be in the minority here. I think a lot of people are really going to take to this film, but it didn't do it for me, but maybe it did it for you. So let me know. And please do consider subscribing to the channel for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. I will be streaming tomorrow once again with JX Editor because we're going to be reviewing Rogue One, which is now kind of a season finale to Andor. We've been doing our streams on Andor Season 2, which we very, very much enjoyed. And I have watched Rogue One now in preparation for the review tomorrow. It's going to be interesting talking about that because we've almost watched it through a fresh pair of eyes now that we've had all of the setup with Andor. And we're going to be talking about any aspects of the film that have been enhanced by that material from Andor, maybe some stuff that doesn't work as well, and everything in between, and where our heads are at with that movie now, 10 years on, or almost 10 years on since it first came out. So yeah, I'm going to be live tomorrow. And then after that, we're going to be finishing off our Don Bluth retrospective, me and Dale, next week. We've just got Titan AE, and then we've done all of the Don Bluth films. And then we'll be gearing up for a very, very special animated retrospective, a retrospective that I've wanted to do for a very long time that could, in fact, rival Disney. And I'm not going to announce it yet, but it is to do with a very specific anniversary of an animation company. And I'm very much looking forward to talking about that. But yeah, big thank you to everyone tonight, and I will catch you hopefully on tomorrow's stream. Have a good one, everyone.